I'd love to know how you got involved in the world of photobiomodulation and photodynamic therapy.
Okay, so got my PhD in synthetic organic chemistry, and while working with various organic compounds, began to be interested in compounds which can act as photosensitizers. So these are deeply colored compounds, or dyes even, which, because they're deeply colored, absorb visible light. Now, the majority of dyes are inactive, such as the dyes you put on your fabric. Fabric dyes don't do anything. But other dyes do things when they absorb light. And some of them are fluorescent. These are fairly well known. But others can do photochemistry. And when they do photochemistry, they can produce reactive species which kill things. And this was discovered 120 years ago, as eventually morphed into what we know as photodynamic therapy. So the idea is that if you can target these dyes to certain cells or tissues and you shine light on them, you generate these reactive species, reactive oxygen species, which can kill the cells. So this became quite popular as a treatment for cancer because they discovered you could localize some of these dyes in tumors, that they had a propensity to accumulate in tumors. Also, you can use them to treat infections because some of other different dyes will bind to bacteria and fungi and all sorts of nasty pathogenic microorganisms. And you can be selective to tissue because if you design the dyes right, you can target tumors, target infections, target unwanted tissue such as blood vessels that grow in the eye or atherosclerotic plaques. All sorts of unwanted cells and tissues can be selectively destroyed by designing the right kind of dye and exciting it with the right kind of light. So having worked in this area of photodynamic therapy for quite a long time, I guess about 15 years, I started to look at the effects the light on its own can have. Because you have to do control experiments, whether that's in cell culture or in mice or what have you. You have a control experiment which is just the light and no photosensitizing dye. And what you generally find if you do that is the light alone has exactly the opposite effect as the light plus the dye. So the light plus the dye, as I said, generates these reactive oxygen species that kill tumor cells and infectious microorganisms. But the light alone has the opposite effect. So it stimulates the growth and the survivability of cells and tissues. Now, if that's a tumor, that's not what you want to do. So that's one reason why photobiomodulation is not used on cancer. If it's an infection, again, that's not what you want to do. So you don't generally use photobiomodulation on infections. But nearly every other part of the body, it is what you want to do. You want to heal it, stimulate it, protect it from dying, increase its functionality, especially when people get older, things start to wear out. So you get all these degenerative conditions where things are wearing out. Injuries are a big problem. People obviously heal from injuries, but healing is often slow and not as perfect as you'd like it to be. So in addition to healing, restoring, regenerating, preventing tissue from dying, it turns out that photobiomodulation can do a lot of other beneficial things. It can very good at reducing pain. The mechanisms for how it can reduce pain are still under investigation, but it's also very good at reducing inflammation. So pain, inflammation, prevention from dying, stimulating regeneration, these are all characteristics of the light alone.